"Happy birthday, my princess." The ballroom lights were so bright, they made the diamonds on the cake sparkle like tiny stars. On the huge stage, Mrs. Victoria Ayamu, one of the richest women in the city, held a folder in her hand. The folder looked simple, but everyone in that room knew what it meant. Company shares. Real power. Real money. Her daughter, Amelia Ayamu, stood beside her in a sky-blue gown, smiling shyly as cameras flashed. And down in the crowd, near the back, where staff usually stayed quiet, a woman in a plain dress could not stop shaking with happiness. Her name was Lydia. She wasn't supposed to be that happy. She was only the maid. But Lydia's eyes were wet with joy, and her lips kept whispering, "Finally, finally." Beside her stood a tall man in a neat suit, clenching his fists like he wanted to jump and shout. His name was David, Lydia's husband now. People around them noticed. One guest leaned toward another and murmured, "Why is the maid smiling like she's the one getting the gift?" Another guest frowned. Maybe she's just grateful? But Lydia's smile was not a thank you smile. It was a we won smile. Then Victoria raised the folder higher. "This," she announced, her calm voice filling the room, "is the document that will place part of Ayama Holdings into my daughter's name." The crowd clapped. Amelia blinked fast, overwhelmed. At the same time, Lydia grabbed David's arm so tight her fingers almost hurt him. David bent close to Lydia's ear and whispered, "This is it. After tonight, we will never bow again. After tonight, we become the owners." Lydia swallowed hard. Her heart beat like a drum. She looked at Amelia, beautiful, dressed in brands Lydia couldn't even pronounce. Lydia's chest filled with pride, because in Lydia's mind, Amelia was not Victoria's daughter. In Lydia's mind, Amelia was her daughter, and the other girl, standing near the side of the stage in a simple dress, helping servers pass drinks, was a billionaire's real child. Lydia's eyes slid to that other girl. Her name was Ella. Ella's hands were slightly rough from work. Her dress was plain. Her shoes were old. Even tonight, on this special birthday, Ella looked like she didn't belong. Ella kept her head down, like she had learned to do, like she had learned to stay small. And when Lydia looked at Ella, Lydia felt something ugly inside her. Not love, not warmth. Something hard, something cold. Stand straight. Lydia had snapped at Ella earlier that day. "Don't embarrass me in front of guests." Ella had only nodded softly. "Yes, Ma." Now, as Victoria prepared to hand the shares to Amelia, David stepped forward like he had been waiting for this moment his whole life. He raised his glass. The crowd quieted. David's voice shook with excitement as he said, "Before Mrs. Ayama hands that gift over, there is something my wife and I must finally tell everyone tonight." Lydia's breath stopped. This was the moment they had promised each other for years. People leaned in. Phones lifted. David pointed toward Amelia. "That young lady," he said loudly, "is not who you think she is." A shocked sound moved the crowd like wind through dry leaves. Amelia's smile faded. Victoria's face stayed calm, but her eyes sharpened like a knife. David continued, louder now. "She is..." Victoria lifted one hand. The room froze again. Her voice was gentle, almost sweet. "David," she said, "before you say another word, I also have something to share." David's mouth stayed open. Lydia's face tightened. Victoria looked around the room slowly, like she owned the air itself. Then she smiled. A small smile. A dangerous smile. And she said, 18 years ago, I heard everything." Lydia felt the world tilt under her feet. David's glass slipped in his hand. Ella looked up for the first time, confused. Amelia stared at her mother, trembling. The room exploded into whispers. What did she mean? Heard what? Lydia's knees went weak. David grabbed her waist to hold her up, and Victoria turned her head slightly and looked directly at Lydia, right there in crowd, like she had been waiting 18 years to do exactly this. Then Victoria said one sentence that made Lydia's blood run cold. "Bring the two girls to me, right now." Ella froze. Amelia froze. And Lydia's heart began to scream inside her chest. Because if Victoria truly knew, Then everything Lydia had built her life on was about to crash. And as guards started moving to the crowd toward the stage, Ella took one slow step back, her eyes wide, like she sensed danger even before she understood it. But what exactly did Victoria know? And why did she look so calm, like she had already won? Hold that thought, because you're about to hear how this all began. But first, hit the like and subscribe button and tell me where you're watching from. What country or city? 20 years earlier, Lydia was only 21 years old. She was not wearing fancy dresses then. She had one small bag of clothes and a tired smile. She came from a quiet place where money was always short and worries were always many. When she arrived at the Ayama mansion for her maid job, she expected the worst. Some rich people shouted at the staff. Some rich people insulted the staff. Some rich people acted like workers were invisible. So on Lydia's first day, she kept her eyes down and her voice low. But then she met Mrs. Victoria Ayamu. Victoria was gentle, the kind of woman who said please and thank you even to people in uniforms. Welcome, Victoria told Lydia, smiling. This is your home while you work here. If you need something, you tell me. Lydia almost didn't believe her ears. Then she met Mr. Nathan Ayamu, Victoria's husband. Nathan was tall, well-dressed, and calm. He spoke to Lydia like she was a real person. Work hard, he said kindly, but don't kill yourself. If you're sick, you rest. Understood. Lydia nodded quickly. Yes, sir. After 2 weeks, Lydia whispered to another staff member, Is this normal? The older cook chuckled. Not normal. My dear, this house is rare. And it was true. For 2 full years, Lydia worked in that mansion, and she was treated well. Victoria gave Lydia a proper room, not a storeroom. Nathan paid Lydia on time every time. When Lydia's mother got ill, Victoria gave Lydia days off and even help with money. Lydia cried that night, sitting on her bed, thinking maybe kindness still exists in the world. That was the first high moment in Lydia's life, the moment she realized she wasn't just a poor girl suffering forever. But then life tested her again, because while Lydia was working in a mansion full of love, her own boyfriend outside the mansion was complicated. His name was David. David was handsome in a sharp way. His smile could look warm, but it could also look like a trick. David didn't live in the mansion. He lived across town, chasing quick money and big dreams. Lydia, he used to say, you're too soft. You think kindness will feed you forever? It has helped me, Lydia would reply. David would snort. Help is not wealth. Wealth is power. Lydia didn't like that kind of talk, but she loved him. And sometimes love makes people ignore red flags. One day, everything changed. Victoria came down the stairs holding a pregnancy test in her hand, eyes shining. Nathan, she called happily. Nathan rushed from his office corner. What is it? Victoria laughed and cried at the same time. I'm pregnant. Nathan lifted her off the ground and spun her gently. The staff clapped. Lydia clapped too, smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. For a while, the mansion felt like a celebration every day. Victoria talked about baby names. Nathan brought home tiny baby shoes and held them like they were treasure. And Lydia, watching all of it, felt hope bloom in her heart. Maybe I will also have a life like this someday, she thought. Then 1 month later, Lydia started feeling strange. She got dizzy when she stood up too fast. She felt sick in the morning. Some smells made her want to gag. The cook frowned at her one morning. Lydia, you're pale. Are you all right? Lydia forced a smile. Yes, Ma, I'm fine. But she wasn't. Victoria noticed too. She walked into the kitchen one day and saw Lydia gripping the counter, breathing slowly. Lydia, Victoria said gently, you don't look okay. It's nothing, Lydia lied. Victoria didn't accept the lie. Nathan, please. We're going to the hospital. Lydia is coming with us. Lydia's eyes widened. Ma, no, it's fine. Victoria held Lydia's hand. You are family in this house. Come. At the hospital. The doctor asked Lydia questions. Then he did tests. When he returned, he smiled. Congratulations, the doctor said. You're 1 month pregnant. Lydia's mouth fell open. Victoria gasped happily. Oh, my goodness. Nathan smiled too. That's wonderful news. Lydia's hands trembled. Pregnant me? Tears filled her eyes. Not because she was sad, but because she was shocked. She called David that evening with shaking fingers. David, she whispered, I'm pregnant. There was silence. Then David laughed. You're serious? Yes. Another pause. Then his voice softened. Okay, we can do this. Are you sure? Lydia asked. David exhaled. We'll keep it. I'll come tomorrow. And when he came, Victoria welcomed him kindly. Nathan shook his hand politely. You are going to be a father, Nathan told him. Step up. David smiled. I will, sir. For months, the two pregnancies grew side by side. Victoria went for antenatal appointments, and she insisted Lydia came too. They attended pregnancy classes together. They learned how to breathe, how to eat well, how to care for a newborn. Nathan even paid for extra vitamins for Lydia. Your baby matters too, Victoria told her. Lydia felt loved, and that love should have made Lydia loyal forever. But love does not stop greed when greed enters the heart. Then came the day nobody expected. It was early morning. Rain tapped softly on the mansion windows. Victoria held her belly and winced. Nathan jumped up from the bed. What is it? Victoria breathed out slowly. I think it's time. Down the hall, Lydia also bent forward with sudden sharp pain. The cook rushed in. Lydia gripped the wall. It hurts my stomach. And just like that, both women were having contractions on the same day. The mansion turned into chaos. Cars started. Umbrellas opened. Phones rang. Nathan helped Victoria into the car, his face tight with worry. Another driver helped Lydia into a different car. David arrived at the hospital with wet hair from the rain and eyes full of fear. Lydia, he called, grabbing her hand. I'm scared, Lydia whispered. It will be fine, David said. Hours passed. Pain rose and fell like waves. Finally, 2 baby girls were born. 2 tiny cries. 2 tiny faces. 2 new lives. Victoria cried happy tears when she held her daughter. Nathan kissed Victoria's forehead, whispering, We did it. Lydia cried too when she saw her daughter. David's eyes shone. She's beautiful, he whispered. In that moment, in that hospital room, everything could have stayed good. That was the high moment again. A miracle. 2 families growing. 2 babies safe. 2 mothers alive. But then came the low. And it started with one quiet conversation in the nursery hallway. That evening, the hospital moved the babies to the nursing room for checks. Lydia lay tired in bed. Then David leaned close and said, Let's go see our baby. Lydia nodded slowly. Yes. They walked carefully down the hallway. The hospital lights buzzed softly. The air smelled like soap and clean sheets. Inside the nursing room, their baby lay sleeping. Next to her, in another little cot, was Victoria's baby, also sleeping. 2 baby girls. 2 tiny arms. 2 tiny breathing chests. David stared at the cots for a long time. Lydia noticed. David, she whispered, why are you looking like that? David didn't answer right away. Then he leaned closer and spoke in a low voice, like he was sharing a secret. Lydia, do you know what this is? Lydia frowned. What? David's eyes were sharp now. This is our way out. Out of what? Lydia asked, confused. David pointed gently toward Victoria's baby. Out of poverty. Out of being servants. Out of begging life for mercy. Lydia's heart began to beat faster. David, what are you saying? David's voice grew more intense. Listen, Victoria will give her daughter company shares when she turns 18. That's how these rich people do it. 18. Big party. Big gift. Lydia swallowed. Okay. David leaned in even more. What if, he whispered, the daughter who gets the shares is our daughter? Lydia's eyes widened so much it hurt. David. Her voice shook. What do you mean? David took a deep breath and said the words that would destroy everything. "Let's switch the babies." Lydia's whole body froze. The room suddenly felt too quiet, too bright, too wrong. Lydia stared at the sleeping babies, then back at David. "No," she whispered. "No, David. That is wicked." David grabbed her hand. "It's smart." "It's evil," Lydia said, voice shaking. "We can't." David's face tightened. "Lydia, do you want to scrub floors forever? Do you want our child to grow up with nothing?" "We can work," Lydia pleaded. "We can save." David's eyes hardened. "Save? With maid's salary?" "Lydia, listen. This is not stealing from them. They are already rich. This is just balancing life." Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "But Madame Victoria is kind." David leaned closer, his voice like honey and poison together. "Exactly," he whispered. "Because she is kind, she won't suspect. Because she loves you, she will never think you can do it." Lydia's stomach twisted. She looked at the babies again. One was hers. One was Victoria's. And in that moment, Lydia's heart fought inside her. Kindness fought greed. Love fought hunger. Truth fought temptation. "David," Lydia whispered, "I don't want to hurt anyone." David squeezed her hand. "We won't hurt them. We'll raise the billionaire's baby as ours. She'll still have love. And our baby? She'll have everything." Lydia's tears fell quietly. "This is wrong." David's voice dropped even lower. "Our baby deserves better than suffering, Lydia." Lydia shook her head. David whispered the final push. The final hook into her weak moment. 18 years. That's all. After the shares are signed and given, we will reveal the truth. By then, it will be too late to take it back. Lydia's breathing grew shaky. She looked at the babies. She imagined her child in torn clothes. Then she imagined her child in diamonds. She felt ashamed, but she also felt tempted. And slowly, Lydia nodded. David's eyes flashed with victory. "Good," he whispered. "Now help me." He stepped toward the cots. Lydia's hands trembled as she moved closer too. David gently lifted one baby. Lydia reached toward the other. They turned. They placed the babies into opposite cots. And just like that, it was done. Lydia stared at the cots like she had just stepped into deep water and couldn't breathe. David exhaled like a man who had been holding his breath for years. "We did it," he whispered. Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "I can't believe we did it." David squeezed her shoulder. "Don't cry. Think of the future." They walked out quietly, trying to look normal, trying to look innocent. And behind them, the babies slept, unaware that two adults had just changed their whole lives. Lydia went back to bed and stared at the ceiling. Her chest felt heavy. Not proud heavy. Guilty heavy. Lydia whispered into the dark, "I'm sorry, Ma." What Lydia didn't know. In another hallway, Victoria was awake. She wasn't sleeping at all. She sat up in bed, and her eyes opened wide. Nathan had stepped out to take a call. Then, quietly, she got out of bed. She moved slowly because she had just given birth. But pain could not stop her, because a mother's fear is stronger than pain. She walked down the hallway, toward the nursery. Her heart beat steady, not wild, like she was thinking, not panicking. When she got there, she did not rush in. She stood at the door and watched. And she saw it. She saw the babies being moved. She saw Lydia's shaking hands. She saw David's calm face. Victoria's fingers curled around the door handle, so tight her knuckles turned white, but she still stayed silent. She waited until Lydia and David left. Then she stepped inside. The room smelled like baby powder. The cot sat peacefully. Victoria walked to the first cot and looked down. Then the second. She didn't guess. She didn't hope. She checked carefully, tiny wrist tag, tiny details, the nurse notes. And when she was sure, Victoria lifted one baby gently. Then the other. Her eyes burned with tears, but her hands were steady. She switched them back, exactly the way they were meant to be. Then she leaned down and kissed her baby's forehead. "My love," she whispered, "no one will steal your life." She placed the babies down carefully and walked back out like nothing happened. No alarm, no shouting, no police. Because Victoria didn't just want to stop the crime. She wanted to stop it in a way that would teach a lesson Lydia would never forget. Days later, everyone went home. The Ayama mansion filled with baby cries and soft lullabies. Victoria and Nathan were busy learning how to be parents. Lydia also returned, carrying her baby proudly, believing she had won. David visited often, smiling more than ever before. And at first, life looked normal. Victoria treated Lydia with kindness, still reduced her workload, still offered her food, still asked, "Are you okay? Are you resting?" Lydia began to admire the baby in Victoria's arms. Amelia. Lydia would smile and think, "That's my daughter." She would imagine Amelia in a big school, speaking good English, driving expensive cars. Meanwhile, Lydia looked at the baby in her own room. Ella cried a lot. Lydia felt irritated by that. She would say, "Why do you cry like this? Rest a beg." Years passed. The babies grew into toddlers, then children, then teenagers. And Lydia's wrong belief began to produce ugly actions. She treated Amelia with soft eyes, even from a distance. "She's so beautiful," Lydia would whisper to herself when Amelia walked past in a fancy dress. But she treated Ella harshly. "Carry this." Lydia would bark. "Clean that." "Why are you slow?" Ella would nod and do it. She never fought back, not because she was weak, but because she was kind. And kind people sometimes suffer quietly until someone finally sees them. Nathan noticed small things over the years. He noticed Ella doing chores more than a child should. He noticed Lydia always shouting at Ella. He noticed Amelia always protected by Victoria. But Nathan assumed Lydia was just strict. Victoria never corrected him. Victoria never revealed what she knew. She watched, she waited, and she prepared. Then the girls turned 18. The mansion became busy with party plans. A huge birthday party was arranged for Amelia and Ella because they were born the same day. Guests were invited. A stage was built. A giant cake was ordered. And Lydia was excited in a way she could not hide. She bought a beautiful gift for Amelia, an expensive bracelet she saved for months to buy. She gave Ella nothing, not even a card. The morning of the party, Ella stood in the kitchen helping staff, wearing a simple dress. She watched Amelia come downstairs in a sparkling gown. Ella's eyes did not show jealousy. They showed confusion, like she couldn't understand why her own mother treated her like a servant. Lydia walked past Ella and hissed, "Move. Don't stand like a statue." Ella lowered her eyes. "Yes, Ma." Victoria saw it, and for a second, Victoria's face tightened. Nathan also saw it and frowned. "Lydia," Nathan said calmly, "why does Ella always look like she's working?" Lydia forced a laugh. "Sir, she likes helping." Ella quickly said, "Yes, sir." Victoria looked at Ella. Ella's voice had no joy in it, only fear. Victoria turned away. But inside her heart, something burned, because this was the part that hurt the most. Not the switch, not the plot, but the way Lydia was hurting her own child without even knowing it. And Victoria knew tonight was the night the lie would die. That night, the ballroom party began. Guests arrived in shiny clothes. Music played. Cameras flashed. Amelia smiled on stage, nervous but happy. Ella stood near the side, helping with drinks, trying to disappear. Lydia and David stood at the back, dressed well, smiling like people holding a secret treasure. Then Victoria stepped onto the stage with a folder. "And we are back to where we started." Victoria raised her hand, and the room went quiet. She looked at Amelia, then at Ella, then she looked into the crowd, straight at Lydia and David. And Victoria said calmly, "Before I hand over these shares, I want one thing." She paused. Everyone leaned in. Victoria continued, "Bring Lydia and David to front." A wave of shock moved through the crowd. Lydia's smile froze. David's face tightened. Two security men started walking toward them. Lydia grabbed David's sleeve, whispering, "Why is she calling us?" David swallowed. "Relax. Maybe she wants to thank you." But Victoria's eyes were not thankful. They were steady, like she was about to open a book and read the last page out loud. As Lydia and David were escorted forward, Victoria lifted the folder higher and said the words that made Lydia's legs weak. This gift is real, but the person who will receive it depends on what Lydia and David say next. The crowd gasped. Amelia blinked in confusion. Ella stared, heart pounding. Nathan stepped closer to Victoria, whispering, "Victoria, what is going on?" Victoria did not answer him. She only looked at Lydia and David and asked, softly but clearly, "Lydia, 18 years ago, in the nursing room, what did you and David do?" Lydia's mouth opened. No words came out. David's eyes darted around the room. The music had stopped. The whole ballroom was silent. Even the cameras seemed to blink slower. And Ella, standing near the side, took one slow step forward, like she was pulled by a feeling she could not explain. Victoria's question hung in the air like a rope, and Lydia realized something too late. This was not a celebration. This was a courtroom without walls, and she was standing right in the middle of it. Mrs. Victoria Ayamu stood on the stage with a folder of company shares held against her chest. Her husband, Mr. Nathan Ayamu, stood beside her, confused and tense. On the floor in front of the stage, Lydia, the maid, and her husband David stood like two people who had walked into a storm without an umbrella. And Victoria's question still hung in the air like a heavy stone. "Lydia, 18 years ago, in the nursing room, what did you and David do?" Lydia's lips parted, but no sound came out at first. Her eyes searched Victoria's face for a hint. Anger? Pain? Tears? But Victoria's face was calm. Too calm. That calmness scared Lydia more than shouting ever could. David quickly stepped forward, forcing a smile so wide it looked painful. "Ma," David said with a light laugh, "it was a long time ago. We were new parents. We were scared. We probably looked confused, that's all." Victoria tilted her head slightly. "That's your answer?" David nodded fast. "Yes, Ma." Lydia swallowed, then added quickly, "Madam, we did nothing wrong. We were only checking our baby. That's all." Lydia's voice shook, but she tried to sound confident. Nathan frowned. "Victoria, what is this about?" Victoria didn't look at Nathan yet. She kept her eyes on Lydia and David. "So," Victoria said softly, "you're saying you did nothing?" "Yes," Lydia said, nodding hard. "Nothing." David nodded too. "Nothing." A few guests murmured. Some were confused. Some were already suspicious, because Lydia and David looked too nervous for innocent people. Victoria took one slow breath. Then she said something that made Lydia's stomach drop. "Okay." Just one word. "Okay." Like she accepted their lie. Like she believed them. Lydia felt her chest loosen a little. David's shoulders relaxed a tiny bit. Lydia's mind whispered, "We're safe." But then Victoria smiled again. That same small, dangerous smile. And she turned to the crowd. "Everyone," Victoria said, her voice clear and gentle, "thank you for coming to celebrate my daughter's birthday." The crowd clapped awkwardly, unsure what to do. Victoria continued, "Tonight was supposed to be simple. A party, a gift, a happy memory." She paused. "But life is not always simple." Nathan's face tightened. Victoria finally looked at her husband. "Nathan," she said softly, "please trust me, just for tonight." Nathan stared at her, then nodded slowly. He didn't understand, but he trusted her. Victoria turned back to the crowd. 18 years ago," she said, "I gave birth to a baby girl in the same hospital on the same day as Lydia." A few people gasped. Many already knew that part. Victoria continued, "That night, I walked to the nursing room because I couldn't sleep. I wanted to see my baby." Lydia's heart began to pound again. David's fingers curled. Victoria's eyes moved slowly, like she was picking her words carefully, like she wanted every word to hit the right place. "And when I reached the door," Victoria said, "I heard voices." Lydia's mouth went dry. David's smile vanished. The guests leaned forward. Phones lifted higher. Victoria added, "I heard someone say the words, 'Let's switch the babies.'" The room exploded into a loud gasp. Amelia, standing on the stage in her fancy gown, blinked rapidly. Ella, standing near the side with a tray, froze like someone had poured cold water on her. Nathan's face changed. His eyes widened, sharp with disbelief. "What?" he whispered. Victoria raised one hand for silence. She looked straight at Lydia. "I heard everything," Victoria said calmly. "The plan, the reason, the time, the lie, the greed." Lydia's knees went weak. David tried to speak, but his throat made no sound. Victoria continued, "And after you both walked away, believing you had won, I walked into that nursing room." Silence again. So quiet you could hear someone's bracelet clink. Victoria's voice lowered, but it was still clear. "I switched the babies back." The crowd erupted. People shouted, "No way! That's crazy. Is it true?" Nathan turned to Victoria fully now. "Victoria, tell me you're joking." Victoria looked at him with wet eyes. "I'm not joking," she said. "I didn't tell you because I wanted to protect our home. I wanted to watch. I wanted to understand who Lydia and David truly were." Nathan's jaw clenched. He looked down at Lydia like he was seeing her for the first time. Lydia's lips trembled. David finally found his voice. "Madam, please." Victoria lifted the folder again. "And tonight," she said, "you thought you would trap me with a public confession. You thought you would announce that Amelia is your daughter, so you could claim the shares." David's face went pale. Victoria looked toward Amelia and gently held her hand. "Amelia," Victoria said softly, "you are my biological daughter." Amelia's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, what is happening?" Victoria stroked her hand. "You are safe. You are loved. I promise you." Then Victoria turned and pointed, not harshly, just clearly, toward Ella. "And Ella," Victoria said, "is Lydia's biological daughter." Ella's tray slipped from her hands. Glasses clattered to the floor and shattered. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. Ella stumbled back, eyes huge. "No," Ella whispered. Lydia made a choking sound, like her whole body was breaking inside. David grabbed Lydia's arm. Lydia stared at Ella, really stared at her, at the simple dress, the tired eyes, the quiet fear, the child she had scolded, the child she had pushed, the child she had treated like a stranger. Lydia's voice cracked. "Ella?" Ella shook her head slowly. No, you're lying. My mother wouldn't." Ella's voice broke. She didn't finish. Because deep inside, Ella remembered too much. Too many harsh words. Too many unfair punishments. Too many times she wondered, why doesn't my mother love me? Now, the answer stood in the middle of the ballroom, ugly and clear. Because Lydia didn't know she was hurting her own child, but she still chose to be cruel. And cruelty leaves scars, even when it comes from confusion. Nathan stepped forward, his voice shaking with anger. "Lydia," he said, "for 18 years you lived in my house. You ate my food. My wife cared for you. And you planned to steal our child." Lydia burst into tears right there on the floor. I didn't steal," Lydia sobbed. We tried, but..." David cut in quickly. "Madam, we were desperate." Victoria's eyes flashed. "Desperate?" she repeated. She pointed gently toward Ella. "That girl," Victoria said, "was desperate every day in my house. She lived with you. She was your child. Yet you made her feel like she had no worth." The guests murmured again, angry now. Some shook their heads. Some looked at Lydia with disgust. One woman whispered loudly, "So that's why she always treated that poor girl like rubbish." Lydia collapsed to her knees. She crawled forward a little toward Ella. "Ella," Lydia cried, reaching out, my baby, please." "I didn't know." Ella stepped back quickly, shaking. "Don't touch me," Ella whispered. Her voice was small, but it cut deep. Nathan turned to his guards. "Call the police," he said coldly. The room went dead again. Lydia's head snapped up. "No, please." David stepped forward, panicking. "Sir, please." Nathan's eyes were hard. "You committed a crime. You planned it. You lived here like a snake under warm blankets. Victoria looked at Nathan, her eyes pleading slightly. Nathan, she whispered. Wait. But Nathan was already beyond calm. He pointed at David. And you tried to use my family like a ladder to climb into wealth. David's face twisted. We only want a better life. Nathan's voice rose. A better life built on evil is still evil. Then something happened that nobody expected. Ella, the girl in the simple dress, stepped forward. Her hands shook. Her eyes were wet. But she lifted her chin like she was trying to be brave for the first time in her life. Sir, Ella said softly. Nathan turned toward her, surprised. Ella swallowed. Please don't call the police. The crowd gasped again. Lydia looked up at Ella like she was seeing sunlight for the first time. David froze. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Nathan's brow furrowed. Ella, after everything? Ella nodded slowly. I don't want him arrested, Ella said, voice trembling. I don't want to carry that in my heart forever. She looked at Lydia and David, then back at Nathan. I've been hurting for a long time, Ella continued. But I don't want to become a hard person because of what they did. Some guests wiped their eyes. Others whispered, Wow. Ella looked at Lydia again, and her voice cracked. I forgive you, Ella whispered. Not because you deserve it, but because I want peace. Lydia let out a loud sob like her chest was tearing open. She crawled closer again, but this time she stopped herself. She didn't touch Ella. She just bowed her head and cried like a child. David's eyes filled too, but his tears looked different, more like fear than regret. Nathan stood still, breathing hard. He looked at Ella's face, then at Victoria. Victoria stepped down from the stage slowly and stood beside Ella. Victoria placed one gentle hand on Ella's shoulder. You are a beautiful soul, Victoria said softly. Ella shook as she cried. Nathan finally spoke again, slower now. I won't call the police, he said. Lydia gasped with relief. David exhaled loudly, but Nathan lifted one finger. However, he said firmly, this is not a free pass. Nathan turned to Lydia and David. You will leave my house, he said, tomorrow morning. Lydia nodded quickly, still crying. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. David nodded too. Yes, sir. Nathan continued, and Ella looked up. Nathan's voice softened for the first time. Ella will stay, Nathan said. Victoria and I will adopt her. We will pay for her education. Her life will be safe. Her future will be protected. You can come see her whenever you want as she's still your daughter. Ella's eyes widened. Sir, Ma. Victoria hugged Ella gently. You don't have to be a servant anymore, Victoria whispered. You don't have to be scared anymore. Ella cried harder. Lydia cried harder too. But her tears now had something worse inside them. Regret. Because the brutal part wasn't just losing the plan. The brutal part was realizing she had been cruel to her own child for 18 years, right in front of everyone. Nathan turned to the crowd. I'm sorry you all had to witness this, he said. But truth doesn't always enter quietly. Sometimes it kicks the door down. Victoria lifted the folder again. And now, Victoria said, the shares. The crowd held its breath. Lydia and David also held their breath, because even now, a small part of them still hoped. But Victoria turned to Amelia and smiled warmly. Amelia, Victoria said, my daughter, I built this company with love and hard work. And today, on your 18th birthday, I place these shares in your name. She handed the folder to Amelia. Amelia's hands shook. Tears ran down her cheeks. But she accepted it. The crowd clapped again, this time louder, because they needed something good after all that pain. Lydia's face crumpled. David's shoulders dropped. Their dream was dead. Right there, in public, in the brightest room, with the richest people watching. That is what made it brutal. Not just losing money, losing it in shame. After the party ended, the mansion became quiet. The guests left in whispering groups. Some shook their heads as they walked. Some still couldn't believe what they saw. Ella sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at her hands. Victoria walked in slowly. "Ella," Victoria said softly. Ella flinched, then looked up. Victoria pulled out a chair and sat close. "I know your heart is full," Victoria said. "You don't have to pretend you're okay." Ella's lip trembled. "Ma, why did my mother treat me like that?" Victoria's throat tightened. She didn't lie. "Because greed can make people blind," Victoria said softly. "And sometimes people hurt the ones they should protect the most." Ella cried quietly. "Was it my fault?" "No," Victoria said firmly. "Never. You were a child. You are still a child." Ella wiped her face with her sleeve. Victoria took Ella's hands gently. "Listen to me," Victoria said. "From today, you will learn something important." Ella sniffed. "What?" Victoria smiled warmly. "Your worth is not decided by who is cruel to you," Victoria said. "Your worth is decided by who you become." Ella's eyes watered again. "But I feel small." Victoria leaned closer. "Kindness is not small," Victoria whispered. "It is power. Real power." Ella nodded slowly. Upstairs, Lydia sat on the edge of her small staff bed, shaking. David paced the room like a trapped animal. "They ruined everything." David hissed. Lydia stared at him with swollen eyes. Stop talking like that." David pointed a finger at her. "If you didn't panic, maybe." Lydia jumped to her feet. "No," she said, voice breaking but strong. "Don't you dare blame me." David froze. Lydia's face twisted with pain. "Our daughter," Lydia whispered. "That was our daughter. And I treated her like trash." David's face hardened. "We had a plan, Lydia." Lydia shook her head wildly. "A plan," she cried. "I lost my child while she was right in front of me." Her voice rose. "I punished her. I shouted at her. I made her carry heavy things. I made her feel unloved." David looked away. Lydia clutched her chest. "And she still forgave me," David muttered. "Forgiveness doesn't pay bills." Lydia stared at him in disgust. In that moment, Lydia saw David clearly, not as a lover, not as a partner, as a voice that pushed her into darkness. Lydia whispered, "I hate what we became." David didn't answer. Morning came too fast. The sun rose like nothing happened. Birds sang. The mansion gate still stood tall. Life kept moving. Lydia and David carried their bags down the grand staircase. No staff spoke to them. No one smiled. The house felt cold now, not because Victoria was cruel, but because trust was dead. At the entrance, Nathan stood with security. Victoria stood a little behind him, holding Ella's hand. Amelia also stood there, quiet, eyes red. Ella's fingers were tangled tightly in Victoria's hand. Lydia's heart shattered again at the sight. She stepped forward slowly. Ella took one step back, still afraid. Lydia stopped. She didn't push. She didn't command. For the first time, Lydia respected Ella's space. "Ella," Lydia whispered. Ella looked away. Lydia's voice shook. "I'm sorry." Ella said nothing. David stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Ella, tell them to forgive us properly. Tell them we're family." Nathan's eyes flashed. "Watch your mouth in my home." David swallowed and stepped back. Lydia looked at Nathan and Victoria. "Thank you," Lydia whispered, crying again, for saving her. Victoria's eyes were wet. "I didn't do it to punish you, Lydia. I did it to protect my child. And later, to protect yours too." Lydia nodded, ashamed. Then Lydia looked at Ella one last time. "Even if you never call me mother," Lydia said softly, "I will still pray for you every day." Ella's lips trembled. She didn't speak, but she finally looked at Lydia, just for a second, and in that second Lydia saw it. Pain, but also a tiny light. A tiny sign that forgiveness might grow one day, slowly, like a plant after rain. Nathan opened the door. "Go," he said. Lydia and David stepped outside. The morning air hit their faces. The gate opened, and they walked out with 2 small bags and a lifetime of regret. But then, right as they reached the gate, David stopped. He turned back suddenly, eyes wild. "This is not over," David shouted. "You think you won? You think you can just take our child and—" Before David could finish, Nathan stepped forward like thunder. "Say one more word," Nathan said coldly, "and the police will be called." Ella chose mercy. "Don't force me to choose justice." David froze. His face twisted. He grabbed Lydia's arm roughly. "Move." Lydia pulled her arm away. "No," Lydia said, voice shaking but firm. "Don't touch me like that again." David stared at her. Lydia looked back at the mansion, at Ella standing safely beside Victoria. Then Lydia turned away from David and whispered the most painful truth of all. "I followed your voice for 18 years, and it destroyed me." David's eyes widened, and in that moment, Lydia didn't just lose a house. She lost a life she thought she was building. She walked forward alone. David stood at the gate, stunned, then hurried after her, shouting her name. Behind them, the mansion gate closed slowly with a heavy sound. Ella flinched at the sound. Victoria hugged her closer. Nathan stood tall, breathing hard. Amelia looked at Ella and said softly, "Do you want to come upstairs with me? We can talk, if you want." Ella hesitated. Then she nodded. And as the two girls walked back into the mansion together, one in expensive clothes, one in simple clothes, the truth settled into the air like a new beginning. Not every family is made by blood. Some families are made by kindness, by protection, by choosing love even after pain. And outside the gate, Lydia's sobbing voice faded into mourning, while David's angry footsteps followed her down the road. That was the final brutal backfire. They planned to steal a future, but they ended up losing everything. And the child they hurt the most became the one who saved them.